No, absolutely. Whilst we're on this, topic of belief systems and the traditional versus the, well, perhaps less traditional, I want to put a question to Mr. Tom White, and this is one of the key questions behind this conference today. There are 4 or 5 questions on our website, which in fact we've asked audience to comment on also. And the question is, do children learn through play? So is play disruptive, as Dr. Shah suggested? Sometimes in an extreme situation it could be. Or should learning be purely academic based?
I think it should be both. I think that, and I don't think that there's a clear dichotomy between the idea of play and the idea of academic growth, because I think in young children, especially very young children, academic growth is play, and play is academic growth. They see what their older peers and what their teachers are doing, what their parents are doing, and that's what they're playing, what they're doing role play. So I think that to take advantage of what we know about how the mind develops means that we need to take and respect the way that young children learn through play. That's what they do. And I want to also comment on what Dr. Hawley was talking about. In the U.S., one of the differences that I've seen is that teachers don't have an automatic respect from their children. They have to earn it, and they have to be somebody that can be respected. Otherwise, they'll get what we say, eaten alive. And I think that's when we're talking about the authoritative structure of schools in Pakistan. And I have to confess that I haven't had a chance to see any schools in Pakistan. I think that's something that I don't know if it's better or for worse, but it's certainly a reality that teachers, if they don't give respect and if they don't show respect for the learning process, they're not going to get respect from their students.
Yeah, well, it certainly... I think it's probably better for teachers, just to answer your question, in Pakistan, because they do have a little bit of an upper hand, which is cultural or built into our value systems. But just coming back to that initial question, I do understand what you say when, what you mean when you say that learning should be both play-based as well as academic. But again, coming back to our cultural context, a lot of parents over here feel that play is a waste of time. So they feel, as schools, we often find ourselves under great pressure to, teach a child A, B, C, and 1, 2, 3 is literally from the minute that he's born. So how does one deal with that kind of, I don't know if one wants to call it, demand or insecurity or whatever?
Probably the best way to answer that would be with an example. A few years ago, I was working with some very young children. They were 5 or 6, and the unit that we were working on was a social studies unit, and we were trying to learn about I was trying to teach them how America was founded in large part by immigrants who came from Europe looking for religious freedom. And when they got there, of course, they met the native people, and then the relationship there began. And to get my children to understand how that worked, we did some role play, and the children took on the roles of the Native Americans who had been in our country before anybody from Europe arrived, and they created the background, they created their homes, they created their characters, and then when I introduced, and they were playing, they had names, they had pretend lives, and I introduced the immigration of people from Europe, the Pilgrims, and the kids at that point got to understand and really experience what it was like for the Native Americans. So was it learning? Yeah. Was there academics? Of course there was. They did a lot of writing, they did a lot of communicating, and a lot of reading, but they did it based on play, on role play. So I guess in my mind, a clever teacher, somebody who respects the learning process, uses children's natural disposition towards play as an academic process.
Thank you. No, that's very interesting. I guess the end objective is somehow to be able to convince the parents that the child is actually learning. And that's often the challenge that we find ourselves in. I'm just going to come to Dr. Pachler because I want to touch upon another important theme or question behind this conference. We all talk of technology enhancing teaching and learning, and even the hosts were talking about this emerging technologies across the curriculum initiative that Beaconhouse has also started. But my question to you is that, does technology really make a positive difference in teaching and learning, or is it just a fad?
I think it's very important not to view technology as a panacea. That it is certainly not. But in relation to all the themes that colleagues here on the panel have been discussing, it would be very easy indeed to give examples and show how significant the contribution of technology is and can be, if used properly, to all these particular areas, particularly as we move into a period when technology tends to become characterized by personal ownership, and children and young people are increasingly in a position of bringing technologies that they own themselves into the formal educational environment. One of the biggest challenges, of course, for teachers in that particular context is that the introduction of a new variable, such as technology, into the teaching and learning process changes the relationship between teachers and learners.
Right.
Learners have got, it becomes much easier for them to actually access the vast knowledge database that's out there in the form of the internet and challenge the knowledge pool of the teacher. It's clearly got an important impact also on the way in which knowledge is built and generated in the first place. So one of the key issues in relation to that, it seems to me, is the need for the teaching profession at all levels to really understand the affordances of technology in relation to learning, not to look at it as a fetish and for the sake of technology, but for the contribution it is able to make, for example, in relation to collaboration and communication. We just talked about games, in relation to simulation, in relation to the interaction between teachers and learners in terms of the learning communities, engaging with learners who are not, or others who are not co-present here in the learning situation, and access to authentic material, authentic tasks. There's loads of examples that could be given how technology can make a very, very meaningful contribution to that process.
I suppose it's linked to stuff that Dr. Hawley and Dr. Shah have also been saying, that number one, as you said, students often end up perhaps being more technology savvy than their teachers. So that takes the teacher out of her traditional comfort zone. And I suppose it's also linked to teacher education. So these are all issues which are interrelated. But certainly at Beaconhouse, it is an ongoing challenge that we face, which is on the one hand to get teachers to use technology effectively, whilst at the same time, you know, ensuring that they're not using it just for the sake of using it, and it's actually adding value. And it's, you know, being able to find that balance. I'm just going to come to Dr. Hoodbhoy for a couple of minutes before we actually open the floor to questions.